This is To Wit, a podcast about women in tech doing life. That's not what we say, is it? A podcast for
women in tech doing life.
Close.
This is us.
It's been a while.
Hey.
I didn't have it in front of me to read.
That's okay. Who cares?
What's funny is I literally just teased Brad about the fact that he doesn't listen to my podcast and he doesn't know our intro, and then I just screwed it up. So
you're like, and neither do I. Same.
And he was like, well, it's because it's not catchy. And I got offended, faux offended. But he really just meant it's not like, doesn't rhyme. You know, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
And he just came in to make sure I wasn't throwing him under the bus.
No, I thought that you didn't know it either. That's I came in here to
busted.
So yeah, so that's how we're rolling.
This is how we're
Melinda.
entering the podcast. Hello. It actually seems very on par for the fact that our guest, it took, what, was it 3 or 4 times to get it to worked out, and technical difficulties and blah, blah, blah. So I think that is very on par, on topic, apropos, if you will.
Ooh, getting fancy with your 2-letter word.
Oh,
$2 words? That's what I meant.
No, I like that they're
I can't even
too.
insult you correctly. Jesus.
So on the show today, we have Hayley Tuller. I have the pleasure of working with her. She has a very rich history, and I find very fascinating military background, and then moved into the Salesforce space. I do know this is a bit of a longer one, but we 100% know it's worth it. So hang in there.
And if you happen to catch Low Code Love, you would have seen her in the intro video.
Yes.
And you would have seen me in the Low Code Lounge. So if you didn't, you should watch both of us. And it was a good time.
Good time. So now, our guest, Hayley. Welcome to the show, version 12. No one knows any differently.
Hi.
Hi. Very excited to have you and talk to you for realsies this time.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to say that, once you get into the Salesforce community and you get to know what's what and who's who, one has a bucket list, and To Wit has been on my bucket list. So I'm very tickled to be asked. Yeah.
It's exciting. Well, I was thinking the other day, something just popped into my head, and I was like, oh, we should have Hayley on the show, because you are a lot of a go-to at work. I come to you with questions.
You're a lot of things,
You're a lot.
Lady.
So we have a very inclusive Slack channel, but we also have the Slack channel of, hey, that's already been put out there. And you're like, fuck, what? So sometimes I'll go to Hayley like, before I ask a dumb question in the general channel, does this sound familiar to you? Should I already know this?
Safe space.
Yeah. I mean, they say it's a safe Slack, but I mean, someone's still going to razz you, namely one. Yeah. And because I get to ask you lots of questions about military things, like I've said before, I expect Josh to know all plane things, all weather things. So now you're my all military things go to. Anything happening in the world, political, that has to do with worldly stuff. So I've loved being able to come to you for that. Thanks.
I am so happy to curate your experience of our country's defense posture and global international relations. This is a service I provide you.
The fact that you can use global defense posture in a sentence, like you're already too legit to quit there. So, I mean, obviously, if Melinda likes you, you're wonderful. But I don't know you that well, so I was, stalking you on the internet a little bit. So, tell me, have you always lived in Florida?
Oh God, no. No, I am actually originally from Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up there, and I enlisted in the Navy after I graduated from high school. And sometimes people ask me, why did I join the Navy? And I say, because there was
experience.
Right. Partly, but also there was an Army base and an Air Force base within a few hours drive of where I grew up. And I thought, if I joined one of those, I might wind up right back here. So definitely the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Forced
yeah, definitely. Well, and it totally worked because they sent me to California, and that was awesome. Yeah, I went to school in California, and then they sent me to Spain, and I was like, this is pretty all right. So I spent 20 years in the Navy. I enlisted right out of high school, and I was an Arabic linguist and a cryptographer while I was in the service. And I reached.
So cool.
It was a very cool job, actually. And I have to say, it was when I first started it was this very nerdy kind of job. And it was, the focus was really on like long-term strategic understanding of another country's defense posture, right? Like, how does Syria use their aircraft? And so it was this very nerdy thing. And basically we all like sat in a basement somewhere, and somebody threw chicken in there every once in a while, and we would generate intelligence and, push our glasses up on our nose and be like very nerdy. Post 9/11, it completely changed. So I did the whole Afghanistan thing, and then I was there for the invasion of Iraq and all the way through the consolidation period. And then I went back to Afghanistan for a couple of years, and then I was actually working in some other, shall we say, undisclosed locations just before I retired. So the second half of my career was very different from the first half. Definitely.
I just can't even, just how you just so casually threw in like, went back to Afghanistan for a couple years. Like,
I had to go back to the store for the milk. I forgot.
Yeah. Or I'm like, I tried red hair for a little while.
Like 2 solid years. Like you were there stationed 2 solid years. No coming home.
Not close. Very close. Not quite. So like, there are rules about how long you can spend in a combat zone. There are rules about how long you can be on flight status, how many hours you can fly in a period. And the reality is we gamed the system in order to get the job done to the maximum we could, just the same as anybody else would, right? So like there were 100% times when, and in theory, I was actually stationed in some place in the Gulf, but I was actually in Iraq. And so my stuff would be in my apartment in some place in the Gulf, like Bahrain, but I would physically be in some place in Iraq, right? For purposes of, operational security. So there were legitimately times when I had to be flown out of the theater because I was over hours and over time or whatever, and literally flew out on a C-12, which if you don't know, it is a very small aircraft. It has like 5 seats. Flown out, spent the night at my apartment, visited my stuff, hugged my stuff, and then turned around and flew right back into theater, basically. So there were times where the breaks were a little bit longer, but the better part of those time frames were essentially spent forward deployed. Yeah.
Okay. And
I
love that Melinda's raising her hand right now. Nobody can see it, but I love it.
You can see Kristi and I we have so many fun questions. I would like to know, what motivated you to join out of high school? Were you going for the GI Bill? Were you like, I just want out of town? Were you a military family?
100%. No, so I was not a military family. Both my parents were medical professionals. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a respiratory therapist. And they got into it when, nursing didn't require a degree. And so nobody from my family had gone to college. So my parents were very like, you shall go to college. This is our children shall be the generation that goes to college. And I just had at least enough presence of mind to know I wasn't ready yet, right? Like I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I thought, well, I'm pretty sure my parents won't continue to support me if I refuse to go to college. So I need to have a plan. Well, it turns out I don't have a whole lot of skills. So what can I do with very little skills? And that was kind of how it happened. Although there was a very healthy dose of, I really just want to see the world a little bit, get whatever I've got out of my system. Like my whole original plan was, I'm just going to do this for like 3 or 4 years, whatever. I'll see a little bit of the world. By that point, I'll know what I want to do with my life, my capital L life, like anybody knows. And then I'll go back to college and I will do that thing. And the reality is they just kept offering me really cool places to go. I just couldn't say no.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, for sure the first half, right? Post 9/11, I was actually what's called stop lost, which means I was not allowed to get out of the military. But I because of the nature of my job, but I have to tell you 100%, like nobody who was doing that job then at that time would have, your attitude at the time was, obviously I don't want to get out now. That would be like a really cheesy move. I want to like do my bit. And I have to tell you that right after 9/11, we all thought, oh, this will be over in like a year or two. Like we thought this would just be like a quick little dust up. We'll go in there. We'll be greeted as liberators. That will be the end of it, right? We'll return Afghanistan to the Afghan people and we'll chase out the Taliban and that will be the end of it. And nobody was really prepared for the multi-year slog that it turned out to be.
Yeah. My question was about, I love your, just like your about on LinkedIn, just sort little quippy quips. And I'm curious what compliance hawk means to you.
Oh, so and that wound up in my LinkedIn bio when I was working at one of my early nonprofit jobs, which was very focused on my technical job was quality assurance. And it was a social services provisioning organization that had a lot of rules that it had to abide by in order to get its grants. So typically when you're in a situation like that, somebody has to be in charge of making sure the aforementioned rules are followed. And I am a champion lunchroom monitor. So that's
actually a really interesting question. So, I mean, obviously once you're retired, you found your way to Salesforce, which we can certainly talk to you about more, but I'm just curious, you know, especially with seeing programs like Maravitz and formerly Vet Force, now Military Force.
Harry Trailblazers. Yes.
Yes. So
it's a mouthful.
Military Trailblazers. Just at how skills translate specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you can't speak for everybody, but how did cryptography turn into admin?
No, but you know, I just really, this is a topic I get a little passionate about because I really struggled with making that transition. And I think this is something that lots of people don't really understand that haven't been exposed to the military community. And, you know, one of the inherent problems of an all volunteer force is that very few people, a very tiny little sliver of the American population serves in the military, right? Which is okay. And the people who are in the military are more likely to be careerists. So you wind up with this like very pronounced separation between the two cultures, and it's not really fully understood. And I, you know, when I was still in the service, I had a very whatever attitude about making the transition. I was convinced, this won't be so hard, right? And we all tell ourselves, you know, you go through transition training that's supposed to prepare you how to sit for a job interview, yes. And it's literally like, so I often tell people that being on deployment is kind of like being in minimum security prison. So going through transition training is a little bit like you're in class in prison and all the prisoners are trying to teach each other about what life on the outside is like. It's like that.
That's so interesting. I mean, yes, especially to somebody like obviously who has an experience, right? But like, is it that you have to make your own choices and you don't have regimented guidance?
No, see, that's the great myth, right? So, and I thank you so much for asking that question because I run into that a lot. Sometimes I will approach problems on the job in lots of different places I've worked. And I have the benefit of being given a tremendous amount of responsibility at a fairly young age. I mean, the one thing that's very unique about the military is they take like a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid and they put them in charge of life and death situations, right? So, I mean, that's how the military works. So if you spend any significant period of time in the military, you acquire a lot of responsibility. So it just never doesn't occur to people that, hey, I'm coming from a position of a lot of experience in a particular topic. Often people will take it as, oh, this is because you were in the military and it's super regimented. So here's how you will think about this. And I always think to myself, tell me all about what the military is like. You who has never been in the military, go on, right? I think that there really is, and it's okay that people don't fully understand it, but I love an opportunity to explain how these things do transfer because it isn't fully understood. Mm-hmm. And honestly, really, it is not this super regimented world that people think it is. You know, everybody's seen the movies. Feel like
boot camp, like, you know, break you. And if you make it through it, maybe you'll be something.
We've all seen the movies, right? So like everybody's seen, you know, all the boot camp scenes. And Yeah. And they kind of get this idea that that's what it's about. Like, that's a training process to indoctrinate you into things like attention to detail and accountability. That's not what the day-to-day reality is like. And it actually really depends on people being very independent, very initiative taking, and exercising good judgment. So I would really say that a lot of what transfers are those same basic skills.
Well, I was going to say the idea of like, you don't just get promoted, right? Like, do you never had to quote unquote interview?
Sure. Well, we do. There's a system of what are called oral boards or performance boards that allow people to be recognized, but they're definitely a very high pressure interview style situation. But they're 100% stylized to that culture. So that was a huge shift to go into a job interview. And I immediately felt like, oh, I'm sitting at a board. This is a promotion board. It's a performance board. Oh, no. It's a job interview. And the rules are very, very different.
Yeah. Well, and then a lot of times I bet that the interviewers are not holding themselves to the standards that you're probably used to being on a board. Like it's a different, there's so many different interviewers. Like I just talked to someone recently that they had an interview and the interviewee or literally talked about themselves the entire time. And they were like, yeah, I think this is going well, I guess. So, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that could be very different of what you're used to of like, there's a different kind of decorum sitting in a board type.
For sure. But I would think like honestly, the biggest thing is that we really, really beat it into people in the military that it's not acceptable. It's not the right focus to toot your own horn. Like it's really at multiple points in my career, there really is like a training process of like, it's not about you, it's about the team. And there is a lot of pressure around, especially when you get promoted to a certain point, that bragging on your own accomplishments is not cool, right? So making that transition into a world where I have to negotiate for my salary.
Yeah, based and you upon, need to toot your own horn.
Right. How do you do that, right? So like when you move from a world where that's not acceptable behavior to how do I have a conversation with people about what my value to the company really is was hard. It was really hard.
Well, it almost, I mean, I feel like my only equating example would be like the idea that people who are good at a job can be good managers. Like, because I think that's
or people really who do something well can teach it. That's a similar,
that's interesting.
Okay, leadership is really, I really respond negatively to this idea that like some people have inherent leadership. No. People have inherent charisma, but they can learn to be leaders. And there are a lot of different ways to be a leader. And they're not all the classic charismatic alpha leader, right? Yeah. There's a lot of ways to do that. There's room for a lot of diversity there.
It's very true.
So when you retired from the military, were you planning to start something? I mean, I guess we hear the word retired and that insinuates like you're retiring, which
no. But I mean, did the retiring mean like I'm done, or you had nowhere to promote to, or were you just over it?
So for me, it was kind of, I'm over it. Right. So I was kind of at this point in my career where I had to make some choices and make some sacrifices in terms of the type of work I wanted to do in order to continue to be promotion viable, right? So I had really forestalled that type of work, which was very administratively oriented for a very long time. And I was able to do that because of my job, right? There were very few people who were qualified and trained to do what I did. So I was able to kind of stay in that space until pretty late in my career. So when you're in the military and you're an enlisted careerist, all of your job assignments are more or less roughly equating to a contract that you negotiate. So you have what's called a detailer, which is a person that you call and say, okay, I'm finishing my tour. What's my next assignment? And you may have a certain amount of time left on your contract or no time left on your contract. So you may have some leverage or no leverage to negotiate for another job. So if you were in a position where you're knocking on the door of like the next level of promotion, then you have very little leverage. And so it really is a world where like, here's what we're going to tell you we want you to do so that you can be promoted. So when I retired, I was like one grade below the highest grade you can get. And when you're at these pivotal points, there really is this perception of like, well, you're going to do what we tell you need to do because you obviously really want to be at this next level. And I did, everyone wants to do well. You want to be successful. Sure. But I had sort of reached this point in my life where the place I had to go and the lifestyle that I had to lead was not one that I was interested in. And I really felt personally, I had never planned to stay in for a full 20. And I kind of, I had actually, just before 9/11, I was working in Washington, D.C., and I had actually planned on getting out of the Navy. So like I had done like a couple tours and I'd been overseas and it'd been super fun. And I came back to the States and I was actually teaching at the National Cryptologic School. So that's it, I'm done. I'm going to get out. I had a whole plan. I was going to go to the University of Pennsylvania. I was like all set to go. And then 9/11 happened. So for me, after we got bin Laden, I felt I could leave, right? So like I really felt compelled to stay through all of that I owed it, not to sound cheesy, but that I owed it to my country. I owed it to the people I worked with. There was a need for me, right? So I wanted to stay. After we got bin Laden, I was like, okay, I'm out. Like that's what I stayed for. I'm good. Y'all go start whatever other stuff you want to, but I did my part. So I really got to this place of like, and that was like just a couple years, that was like a year and a half or something before I retired. And then I was like up for orders and I negotiated and it was no place I wanted to go. And I just felt like I had done what I could do, and I think for women, it's super hard to make a midlife career shift. It's way harder for women than it is for men. And I think your age is like, it's a huge factor in that, right? So like, either I needed to be committed and I was going to see it through to what we call higher tenure, which is like the oldest you can be in the military and then you have to retire. Whereupon your retirement is enough that you can't actually retire. Or I needed to make the jump when I was the youngest that I could be because I knew it would then be, I don't want to say the easiest, but the least difficult transition I had to make. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
That's a lot, but yeah.
This is probably like rude, maybe. I don't know. So you're volunteering to serve, and I totally get that, but you're getting paid.
Yeah.
How do you have a sense of how the salary compares to, like entry level jobs you would have had?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because
she's maniacally laughing. Are there flames behind you?
Honestly, here's the thing: is that anybody can look up the pay tables, right? I will tell you the biggest difference is that pay is public, right? So like how much you make. I knew how much everybody I worked with made. There were no mysteries, right? Everybody's pay was public. And I kind of miss that, to be honest with you. It's one of the things I miss the most.
Interesting.
But yeah. So it's a world where everybody knows what everybody else makes. When you first start, the pay is very low, right? So I remember leaving boot camp and getting my paycheck. Admittedly, this was a little while ago. So I enlisted in 92. So I remember leaving boot camp and you get your like back pay from like the 2 months you were in boot camp. And it was like 2 months worth of a paycheck. And I got a check for like $800. And I was like, beer money.
But that was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Sure.
Yeah. It was $863. I remember that. So you can look up the pay tables, they're public, but the reality is you also get a portion of your pay is in what's called allowances, and allowances are not taxed, right? So if, for example, I was a flyer, so I got paid a flight allowance. I was deployed to a combat zone, so I got hazardous duty pay and imminent danger pay, right? So you can kind of stack these allowances on top of your base pay. So anybody who's Googling base pay, you actually do get a little bit more than that. You get a housing allowance, you get a food allowance, etc. So if you stay in for a full 20 and you promote relatively well, then you're looking at like, mid 50s to mid 60s kind of range, right? Like it's a professional salary. When you first start though, it's like sub $20,000. It's like, it's very, very little.
Well, it's interesting to look at this, like because I Googled it because you told me to, like at the lower, presumably pay grades, I guess. If you
get the lingo down,
right? Well, I was gonna say positions, right, but not really. But like the longer if you stay in the same position for a long time, you're making the same money. So like, of course you want to get promoted, but it's not until like the third tier of pay, fourth tier, that you even start getting more money than people that have been there less time than you.
I personally really feel the real penalty lies in inherent in choosing to serve in the military for any significant period of time is that you will make a career shift. And that career shift comes with it a penalty, right? So like, sometimes I get tempted to think about like, where would I be today if I had started in tech back when I enlisted in the military? I'd be a lot further along than I am now. Right? There's no question. So to me, my pension is really about making up for what I could have done with my life if those weren't the choices that I made, right?
Okay.
That's the real price you pay. Because look, let me tell you something. Real talk time. When I retired, I went back to school full time and I got my degree. Amazing experience, GI Bill. It was great. And the whole time I was like, I will totally have no problem getting a job. Like I was in charge of people and stuff and had all these responsibilities and it was great. I spent almost the first year. So most of the first year after I graduated from college, I spent cleaning pools because it was the only job I could get.
Wow.
So that was like, that was hard, right? To go from second in command of a unit and deploying people to war zones and managing classified material and being at the peak of your game. You know, imagine being at a job that you're good at and you're successful and respected for it. And now you're going to walk away from all of that and you're going to go clean pools because that's the only job you can get. Yeah.
So, and like, I guess you're right. Like, what skills would you put on a resume? Like linguistics, obviously that's great. But so you didn't think about going into any kind of translator type situation, or was that not available?
Yeah, so lots of people do. I worked with a lot of people who stay in what we call the business, right? Stay in intelligence and cryptology, right? But for me, I was really like, I want a fresh start. Like I really want to like do something new and different. I want to do something, you know, I don't want to come off as not thankful for the opportunities that I was given, but I did the work I did because it had to be done. Like I didn't do it because I loved it. I did it because our country desperately needed people to do it. And more to the point, people I worked with needed me to do it, right? Other people depended on me to do it. I didn't do it because I loved it. So I was really ready to do something I loved.
And so what kind of things, when you're saying the only job you could get was cleaning pools, what kind of things are you hearing in interviews? Like you're going...
Yeah. So people are really fond of these scenario interviews now where they ask you to tell them a story. Like, tell me about a time that you blah, 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 right? So if all of my work experience...
Those are annoying.
I know, they're so awful. They're so awful.
Oh my God. It's like, sell me on yourself. Yeah. Tell me about a time that you overcame a struggle. Right. Fuck off. This is a struggle.
So if you were in an interview and you enlisted in the military at 18 when you got out of high school, and then you retired and then you went back to school, and now here I am interviewing for a job, you can see my resume in front of you, right? What kind of story do you think you're going to get? So I would tell about stories in a military context, and I would try to like civilianize them the best that I could. And people would stop me and say like, well, do you have an example that doesn't have anything to do with the military?
Well, no.
Did you read my resume?
Yeah, I know, right? And I think though,
not to be an ass here, but clearly you didn't read it.
Bottom line is there's a lot of people that have like very entrenched ideas about what they think the military is about. That they're really convinced that I was, you know, I don't know.
You know about guns and drones.
I blow shit up and I tote heavy things and like not that I'm a problem solver and a manager and you know, project oriented and all, no. And for me, it was also a lot of work to learn the terminology because the terminology is completely different. right? So it's not just, I've been conditioned to not toot my own horn. Also, like, all of the like vernacular, listen, people say like the military has a language, legit. So does Salesforce, so does tech, so do nonprofits.
Tech in general. Right? The acronyms, like when people throw them out in calls, like I should just know what you're utilizing the TLP for. Like, what? Why would I know that?
Right. So I didn't have any of that vocabulary. So I went into these situations with like, I'm going to tell you, first of all, I'm going to tell you stories that you don't want to hear. Second of all, I'm going to use terminology that you don't know, even though I'm trying really hard not to. And third of all, I'm going to display the values I've been taught to display, which is I'm oriented to the team. It's not about me. My personal accomplishments are not just not relevant, but are unwelcome in this context. You know, that's a tough transition to make.
That piece alone, I feel like, isn't as not as damning, but like as the others, right? Like because I think if you're working on a team, then like I think that's an okay angle, you know. But
well, and you also,
but don't you feel like in tech in general?
Yeah, well, your age is a huge factor too. So there were a lot of job interviews I went on where there were entry-level jobs because I was new to the industry, but they're looking at me and they're doing the math and they're figuring out my age and they're just like, we just don't see you being happy being a receptionist. Well, real talk time, I'm not going to be, but this is the only job that I can get hired for. So
it's an interesting catch-22, right? Like
it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, before we get into kind of how you found and made the transition to Salesforce is one, I worked with a woman a long time ago. It was a year ago. Why does everything seem so long right now?
Time has no meaning.
It's like, I believe I was in my 40s.
The other day.
At Blue Wolf. And we met for coffee at Dreamforce. And we got to chatting about supporting and encouraging women to negotiate raises, negotiate your salary, because we're notoriously poor at it. We're always just like, oh my God, thank you for offering me a job. I just thank you so much. I'll take whatever you can give me. So we were talking, and she said something along the lines of, like you said, you're missing the fact, the visibility to pay. She had made some comments about the fact that we have this pay gap would be obsolete if we weren't all so secretive about what we make. And employers couldn't work or game the system if everyone was all in alignment. But I would say that we're all in the same age group-esque, that we're raised that we don't ask. It's rude. You don't ask what someone makes. You definitely don't ask colleagues what they make. But I'm trying to also break that, and I will offer it up or ask people, because it does make sense, especially for, women in general, women in the tech industry, that to be clear and open about it. Why? It doesn't hurt anybody. And it may cause some strife, I guess, but if we were all constantly open, it wouldn't have, we wouldn't have this negative connotation about talking about it or pitting us against each other in a tight situation.
I 100%.
So you and I talked about that.
I 100% salute you on that. So the bottom line is, when salary is kept secret, the losers are women and minorities and the winners are white men. The end.
But
convince me otherwise.
So it's an interesting catch-22, I think, because based on my experience, quote unquote, should I be paid more? Probably. But I'm happy with what I'm making. So
well, and I think it's fair to say, look, I put that in the context of the other compensation I get, right? Like if you're super confident that the culture of your organization is such that has real value to people, own it. Put that out there, name it, claim it, own it, right? Lots of people, look, I spent 20 years in the freaking Navy, people. Clearly, I'm willing to work for less than I'm worth, right? People don't just work for the amount of money. They work to be a part of something that motivates them. They work for a sense of purpose. They work for the social aspect, and that's all okay. But when you keep it a secret, it's impossible for me to not think, what are you hiding? Right?
But to me, the flip side is, so my ex used to do hiring for his team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from a business perspective, again, not that you want to think about people as, but I mean, a salary is a cost of a line item. So there's got to be a range, right? And so he used to get so mad at me when I told someone what I made in a job interview situation, what I was making currently. And he was like, "What? Why? They already have a range. Let them go first. They don't know. There's no way they can prove it, right?" And I think it's such an interesting, like,
well,
thing to, quote
look,
unquote,
if you,
lie.
there's no reason not to tell people going into the interview that this is the range, right? So like, I'm not just talking about like, hey, they won't put a specific number on it. I'm talking about, here's a job listing. You're going to go all the way through the interview process and nobody's even going to tell you the range that we've budgeted, right? So like, that exists for no other reason than the hope that you will go in that room with a number that is below that range. So they can go,
yeah, but we'll take
it. Yeah.
Even to Melinda's point, though, if they did give you a range or they give you the first offer, I think it's, if you think about it, it makes sense that that offer is at the low end of that range.
Right. I did not have the experience of people. So I did apply for a few jobs, and over the course of my very brief career prior to getting into consulting, I did work at a few nonprofits where they published the salaries, where they were very clear when they put out the job listing, this is the salary range. But I also had a lot of experiences where it was 100% top secret, and they 100% made me say a number first.
Well,
right?
It's interesting too. I almost equate it to like dating, like, or asking someone asking someone out. Like, if you get up the courage to ask someone out and they say no, you're not in any worse place than you used to be.
Yeah,
right.
It's true.
You just, and that was one time he said that to me. He's like, obviously they want you to work there. The worst thing they can say is, no, this is the maximum amount of budget. And then, and then you get to decide what you want.
But that's the power of it, right? That's the thing that we're not conditioned to do as women. So we're really taught that going in there and saying, I'm going to call out a number and maybe it's higher than what you have budgeted, right? We are so conditioned. And I will own this. I felt this way too. If I say a number too high, they'll be offended because it's rude for me to think that I deserve that. Right? Like there really is this inherent mindset of, I may convince them to take the offer off the table because I said too high of a number.
Well,
right.
So
when the reality is that for them, and I see this now on the other side of it, for them, so much of it is a cultural fit. What's most expensive for companies is turnover, right? Like, so they want to find the right person. They want to find the right fit. If it costs them a little bit more money, they're usually willing to do it. So if they like you enough to extend an offer, right, they're probably not going to take that offer off the table because you set a number that was higher than they can go. This is what I didn't realize, right? That was the message that I had never gotten, and that women really need to get, because what men sitting on the other side of that table don't understand is that we have been conditioned that it is poor behavior, it's poor leadership, it's not being socially oriented or considering other people to say a number that may be too high, and that you're communicating a negative value that would make them not want to hire you. So I think that's the issue.
I was thinking more of, once you have an offer, in terms of a counter offer, right? Like, the worst thing you can do is ask and they say no, but then they're not going to say,
nope, we don't have it.
So I didn't realize that.
No, and now we don't want you to work here anymore because you got greedy. Get the fuck out.
How dare you?
So the takeaway there is, if you say to a company, like, here's the number I'm looking for, and they say, well, no, we can't do that, but here's what we can do, and maybe we can make it up to you in other ways. Hey, good company. If you say, here's the number I'm looking for, and they're like, yeah, the offer's off the table, that should tell you something about that company, and maybe you don't really want to work there.
Especially because your number is not coming out of thin air. Like, especially if your number is based on research and legitimacy, and not just, I want to make $250,000 a year,
right.
Then.
Well, and aside from the initial acquisition of a job. I think in general, us keeping silent about pay, I think that people that do the same job as you, that get paid less, women and minorities, like you said, we don't know because we have all been taught that it's super rude to talk about it. But why is it rude? You have a budget. Company has a budget. I have $500,000 to spend on employees. This is where it's spent. Cool. That makes sense. But in the same sense, or on the flip side of the coin, you know, Josh and I are doing the same job. Can I just know why he makes 50,000 more? What more is he contributing? I'd like to level up.
Tell me how I get there.
Let's chat.
What value is he bringing that you would like to see me bring? Right. I think those are very productive conversations, and you can't have them when it's all a secret, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're taking.
Well, and I just, like I said, you saying that, and then that past colleague saying that, it was kind of a, oh yeah. So I make a point to encourage any of my fellow women in the community to negotiate, and, you know, it's okay to be transparent, and it's okay to share. And if you're not comfortable with that, but you want to share with your friends, it's okay. No one's going to judge you, and it's okay to say, I make this, because maybe a friend can say, that's a really great salary. Or a friend can say, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe that seems a little industry low, but, you know, let's work towards that if they're having angst about it. But us not
talking about it,
not negotiating, like at all. Like I try, I mean, like even with Arcus, like the offer was great, but I was like, oh my God, I'm not following my own advice if I don't negotiate.
Oh, I didn't know. So,
and I was
so by the time I finally landed like a decent job, so I did work in nonprofits for a while, and I was obscenely and grossly underpaid, which is
that how you met
kind of it's a nonprofit.
It's kind of part of the process.
Tell us.
Kind of part of the experience, you know.
Okay.
And I really felt like I had it built up a narrative. Look, you know, I spent a lot of hours pushing a pool cleaning broom around, thinking, you know, like I just like
Cabana girl.
I'm ready to use some of my skills. So when I got to that point, I was pretty stoked about it, regardless of what I was being paid, right? And I was in the great position of, I draw a pension and a disability settlement from my military career. So I was in a position that I could be flexible. So for me, it was a long road to get to the point of like, okay, well, maybe it's time to start getting serious about this, as this is my profession, and I need to like go into these situations and negotiate. So when I first landed my first, what I would consider to be real job, I'm air quoting, nobody can see me, you know, like a real professional job in the Salesforce ecosystem, I did not negotiate at all. In fact, I was pushed into saying a number, and I said a super low number, and I was like, boop, boop. Yeah, I have a job. And I don't regret it. Yeah. Right. In hindsight, I mean, real talk time. I mean, I was so green that I just wanted that to be like a super easy decision. But I think that the thing that's in women's minds that is not in men's is that you will repel people if you say a number that they haven't budgeted for. And I don't think men think that way. I think that's the key difference.
Or lead with your worth. Like what you feel your worth is, it will be like, gross.
Ew.
Why are you tooting your own
horn?
Don't
you just think you're just the shit? Yeah.
You're bitchy and demanding and controlling and all of the words.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I
Men
get
can
it.
be assertive. Women
So
are
when you were a
bitchy.
nonprofit, yeah, this is very true. We could go on with all the adjectives. So what was the first nonprofit? Like, how did you, so you went into nonprofit, and then when did you say, like, ooh, I kind of like that tech thing?
Yeah. So I originally, the first like legit nonprofit job I got was working as the front desk receptionist at the Symphony here in Jacksonville. And my hope was that it would be a doorway to other things. And that was really very much their attitude at the time they hired me. So I made friends with the people who worked on the database. There's a system called Tessitura that's widely used in performance, fine arts performance industries, because there's a lot of front of house management pieces.
Okay.
But it's not dissimilar to Salesforce. It's just it's an awful lot uglier, I will tell you that. But it was essentially a, donor management, front of house management database. And I was like, ooh, hey, this is great. Like my brain kind of works this way already.
Yeah.
Everybody else seems to hate it. So I like it. Right. And I realized very quickly the ability to have an influence on the strategic direction of the organization by being involved in its data and its data management. And so I kind of did it pinch hitting for a while, and eventually I applied for a job at a hospital foundation. So I worked at a nonprofit hospital foundation that raised money and dispersed it in grants, and they used Razor's Edge. And so I was a Razor's Edge administrator there. Oh yeah, we've all heard of that. Yeah. I have my scars, right? So I worked as a Razor's Edge administrator for a while, and I enjoyed it, but I was frustrated with the constraints of the system. So I found out about this place in town that was advertising for this job that was 1/2 compliance, which as a former aviator, is 100% in my wheelhouse. So I knew I could do that piece of the job. And then the other piece of the job was get us off of our current database. It's not a good fit for us. We need to figure out what is, and we need to make that transition. So I interviewed for the job and I wound up getting it. And in the course of researching options, I stumbled on this thing called Salesforce.
Hello. So what year was this?
Oh my goodness. You're going to make me do math. It was like,
guess.
4 years ago?
Okay.
3.5 years ago, somewhere like that. Yeah. So we did that. We did the full implementation, and it was awesome. And the clouds parted, and angels sang, and unicorns pooped glitter, and it was magical. As they do. And I would like to say that database work is a little bit like doing the dishes, that if the dishes are getting done, nobody really cares and is paying attention. But as soon as the dishes aren't getting done, everybody's like, who's supposed to be doing the dishes? It went well. Oh yeah. Well, lots of people hate doing database work. So it was going great. And then they were like, okay, so great. Now you can do other stuff. You can go work in finance. You can go do this other stuff. And I was like, but I like Salesforce. So
I don't want
to. Yeah. So eventually, So I, after spending several months doing other things, I made the decision that Salesforce was the career for me, and transitioned to being a consultant so I could do it full time.
So that's interesting. Does so you've worked in one place and managed their database and been, the QA, been the hawk for their data. So
yes.
how does that translate to consulting and working with different clients? And because that's almost it's interesting because that's almost an even different skill set, right?
I would argue that it's not. So the key to a really good quality assurance
program,
with
me on my own podcast.
Yeah, here we go. Let's do it. So the key to a really good quality assurance program and a really good compliance program is baking that into all of your processes. And I can think of no process more central than the database that you use to collect information, to track the services that you render, and then generate the reports that you send back to your funders. So for the people who work at nonprofits and receive public funds, they know there are a lot of rules and strings attached to those funds. And if you do not comply with all those rules, then you don't get your money. So it's very closely related to getting paid. And if you were thinking through those things, right, to me, compliance goes hand in hand with database design. If you're thinking through those things, well, I know that for every dollar I spend out of this particular database that I have to match that dollar. Oh, but volunteer hours count as part of that match. Well, now all of a sudden how I track those volunteers and what specifically they're doing with their time is super important. It's tied to the revenue for my organization. So I'm now going to take that to my design for how I manage volunteers, right? To me, that's very intuitive.
So do you like being a consultant and working on various projects versus having your little compliant baby that's your own?
I mean, there are pros and cons both ways. So the positives of being a consultant are the variety of use cases that you see. So 100%, I learn way faster as a consultant because I'm just touching way more of the product lineup that Salesforce offers, right? So if you work as a solo admin, then you are constrained to only the things that your organization subscribes to, right? But I get to touch everything that any one of my clients subscribes to. So I definitely learn a lot faster and I'm exposed to a lot more use cases. What I miss, I'll put it this way. Here's what I miss. I miss
about being an admin.
About being a solo admin. I miss the sense of ownership. Like it's your baby and you're growing your little orb and you water it and watch it grow. I miss all of the like phase
or
2,
you
phase
build
3,
things
phase 4.
And no one uses them, and then the executives decide to deprecate something that you put your heart and soul into.
Thank you for reminding me the reality, right? Like there's no perfect scenario. There's pros and cons both ways. But for me right now, I want to learn all of the things, like just blast me with the fire hydrant. And that is 100% what consulting life is all about.
That's true. But I think it also takes a certain level of confidence to know that people are going to ask you about things that you don't know. And for you to be able to say, like, I'm confident Salesforce has a way to handle that. Let me take that back and figure that out. Right? That takes a lot of... I think there is a certain comfort in, I'm in communities every day. So I can pretty confidently tell you right off the bat whether communities can handle something that I'm going to get asked in a random meeting. Right. So, it kind of jack of all trades, master of none, but there's so much Salesforce that there's a need for that. You need both sides of it.
Yeah. And I think it's also not just like, I think there's some people that are well suited to being consultants and some that are better suited to being admins, but I also think it can be like phases of life that you go through. And I would definitely say the ability to like be confident under pressure and kind of tap dance and say, yep, I'm going to figure this out no matter what it takes. I 100% got that from the Navy. Definitely.
Yeah. I don't know the answer, but I'll go figure it out. I don't know the answer,
but I will find it out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have fun, silly questions. What is the one thing you miss most about the military?
I miss the built-in infrastructure that means that you can walk into a room with people you've never met before, and it's very obvious who you are and what you're capable of doing and where you fit into the puzzle. There's just a whole lot of like, dare I say, butt sniffing that has to go on in the civilian world that doesn't really happen. It's very common in that scenario to find yourself in a situation where you literally walk into a briefing room and it's like, we're going to go fly a mission together. We're going to go do something dangerous together. I just met you, right? But we have to have certain minimum understandings about each other and what we're about to be able to walk out there and do that. So I miss a world where you could look at what was on my uniform and very quickly say, I know what you're about and what you bring to the table. I know who this person is and where they fit in, and being taken at face value on that. I miss not having to constantly reprove my value, I think.
So you're saying the buttons on my badge lanyard don't equate to what I know in the military? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite place to go to?
Oh, God.
That you got to visit?
That's so hard. I don't know. I saw some pretty amazing places. So I lived in several countries in Europe, and that was an amazing experience. I spent a lot of time in Italy. I went to Oktoberfest in Germany. I saw the western coast of Africa, and I dove in the Red Sea, and I've been to Majorca and all these really amazing places. It's really tough. I think the thing that I miss the most was the easy access to be able to see and experience a lot of things in an affordable and very flexible way, right? So like when you're overseas in the military, it's like super easy to be like, you know what, I've never been to the Seychelles, and it's like an hour hop from Bahrain, so let's go to the Seychelles, and I'll rent diving gear while I'm there, and I'll go diving, and it's like super casual, and you have these amazing experiences. So I also think the best part about it is living in foreign countries too, not just visiting them.
Yeah. So as a caveat of that, with all this money I'm saving by not traveling this year
anywhere,
nobody's going anywhere.
I'm not buying any clothes or shoes. I'm not spending money on getting my hair
would you
done.
wear them?
All this money I'm saving. Like, is there some place that you think maybe I wouldn't think to visit, but that 2021 Kristi should totally go?
Majorca.
No, well, I actually wouldn't put Majorca on that list because it is already very touristy.
Oh, really?
There are some really amazing, super underground places. Oh yeah.
I'm just saying, I read a book recently it made it sound like it was still pretty not visited.
I mean, compared to like Ibiza, yeah. But I'll tell you what's one of the best kept secrets. What's one of the best kept secrets in the Mediterranean is Slovenia. Right. Really? So the lid has been busted off of Croatia because of Game of Thrones. So everybody knows about Croatia now, right? And then it's amazing and all that stuff.
What? It was filmed there?
Yeah. Croatia is where they filmed the Red Keep, right? That was in Croatia. That was in Dubrovnik. Really? Yeah, which I've been there. I've been to Dubrovnik and Split. But if you just keep moving on up the coast, Slovenia is super amazing and isn't really discovered yet. Albania is a really great place. Yeah, there you go. Write it down. Slovenia. Slovenia is beautiful. And it's like the city and the town are like Austria, but the coast is like the rest of Croatia. It's really amazing, right? And then there are also like, I will tell you the other thing. If you're more of a tropical escape person, Guam. Guam is one of the best kept secrets. So like Guam is not on the American radar at all, right? We all think about Hawaii. So I want you to imagine Hawaii and then remove all of the tourists, right? And all of the boutiques, all of the like super spendy restaurants. That's Guam, right? So it's the same landscape. It's the same beaches. It's the same, amazing wild space and everything. And there are a ton of Japanese tourists there because they love it, but there are hardly any Western tourists there. And it's amazing.
You feared it here first.
Guam's the next.
Great. Now it's not a secret. All 300 of our downloads. That's it. We've blown the lid off Guam.
I think we should have a 2-week conference. We should all like go to Guam and like.
We tried.
I know the boat thing. What happened with that?
We tried. We don't have a conference. More
of a get together.
2-WIT One Ship was a good attempt. We didn't get the people, and so
we didn't get the people. And honestly, there was the timing, and I had this weirdly uncomfortable feeling about it, and not like something bad would happen, but it was like excited. Something like getting the kid, and it was all it was more of a task, and I wasn't excited anymore. And I'm like, I'm gonna go with that. Like, obviously, that's not gonna work. I love cruising. And Josh has never been on one. I want to take him on one, but there was just the timing of the kid. And I was like, I'm not great about it.
I can't. I did too many. No, so I just cannot get into the idea. So I did too many.
You don't want to go on another boat for 20 years?
That were not.
Yeah, the mess hall is a little different. If anything, I think I could totally see us doing 2-WIT one all-inclusive resort. So that way it's a little more flexible, right? If you can come for 2 days, great. If you want to stay for a week, good on you. Like,
and you don't have to be restrained to.
You know what I really want to do that I feel like everybody is doing is these like desert Southwest getaways where they're going to like some really cool place in Joshua Tree Park or whatever, and just like drinking amazing umbrella drinks by the pool and all of that. I feel like there's a lot there. There's a lot of potential there.
Okay, so I like that this has turned into a travel planning adventure.
I mean, we're so stuck inside, guys. Dreamforce is virtual now. Y'all. I said, guys. Sorry, Mary. I meant y'all. Mary Scott, and I owe you $1. I'm sorry.
That is an interesting. So I feel like we've come to the time that it's a quarantine check-in. Yes. How you doing? How do you like being inside with your squeaky toy dog and your spouse? And I don't know what else you have. That was all of that too.
I will tell you, I mean, in all honesty, like I have kind of like, okay, here's the thing. this whole, you're stuck in a very limited physical space and you can't really go anywhere, and all any of us ever do is just work, and
that's like
you can occasionally order out food. Yeah. So it's
this was your 20 years.
It's not dissimilar to being on deployment, actually. It's really it's pretty So I have actually myself struggled with like not getting into the deployment mindset, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're hanging in there. It's a lot. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's really
different. It's different.
It's different, and I think for like day to day, it's become like I'm not, you know, my boyfriend and I sit next to each other in the office at our own desks, and we work, and then
good on you.
Like he then like pivots to doing other stuff on the computer, and I come watch TV in the other side of the house, or we like in the middle we have his gaming room TV, which I'd started a puzzle in there, so like, you know, we have different places we can be separate and whatever. But then you think about like they're not going to do Dreamforce, and then I'm like, I mean, just thinking about, I mean, I was teasing about my budget, but like I'm at the point where not only am I attending Dreamin' events that like or official Salesforce events to learn things, but I have a series of friends that run events, and I literally just attend to like the learning is a bonus, right? But I'm seeing people, and we go wine tasting, or we extend through the weekend, you know, and so it's like combined. I totally agree. Life. So
at some point, and I wasn't paying attention when it happened, but you know, I originally went to Dreamforce and Dreamin' events because I was going to learn and like get value for my nonprofit and all that. And at some point I just kind of like, it turned into, yes, you were doing all that, but also this was the time that you connected with your tribe, right? So like, whether you are a solo admin in your organization or your nonprofit, or whether you're a consultant, you're working remotely, those events are the times when we actually get to see each other and give each other hugs and go out for drinks and like build all of that rapport. And it just
and it's interesting because
nowhere near on the horizon.
So much of that has led to like, I need a consultant that does this. Oh, I talked to somebody over dinner at Dreamforce that has a brother that does that, right? Like, so there really is an interesting value in those offhand conversations, which with people, you know, you can kind of target through Zoom or through, you know, intention. But it's interesting. Like you don't have as much of that, that like accidental exposure.
Boy, you really hit the nail on the head with that. And I hadn't really fully like grokked that yet. And that's 100%. So like you can remotely plan things and reach out to people and have Zoom calls, but you're right. It's the happy accidents that don't happen. Right. And it's the happy accidents that really grow your network and open your eyes up to things that you weren't thinking of. Right. And that's what's off the table, really.
Well, and it's interesting how it all just changes your mindset. So Melinda reached out to me and was like, hey, Rachel Hollis is doing her Rise conference that we've talked about attending. She's doing it virtually. And my immediate reaction was like, no, like I'm not in a place right now that I'm worried about my existential being. Like I'm worried about the stress of grocery shopping. You know, like it's just interesting. Somebody posted like the triangle of like the hierarchy of needs, basically, and like
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, you know, we're kind of living on the bottom levels right now, and that's okay.
Am I safe?
I am.
Am I healthy?
Listen, if there's people out there who are cleaning their whole house, good on you, but it ain't me.
You know what? If I see one more Instagram post about whatever wholly enriching activity I have taken up, I don't know, the ukulele, the people who are learning to paint, you know, I'm learning a foreign language or whatever with my quarantine time, I'm going to barf.
So the other thing about like the virtual events, I will say, just to kind of go back to that, I'm actually kind of excited to see how Salesforce does it, because they do a lot of things in that space specifically really well. So I'm curious. I'm excited to see how they make this different and better and
reimagine.
And like just somehow make it cooler than any other like virtual
I'm just gonna
event,
say,
sure.
Melinda, like, it's gonna have to be pretty darn cool to replace an actual hug from you.
Aww.
Well, this is the damn truth. That is irreplaceable. And we should be having another Arcus event this year, and that is not happening, and we're not talking about it.
I'm so glad we squeaked that in before the hammer fell.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's funny too. I remember walking around in New York, getting some breakfast or lunch or something before a meeting, and it's early February, and I laughed to myself, and I was like, "Well, man, if I'm going to get the coronavirus, this would be the damn place, wouldn't it?" Like, just you're making offhanded jokes because it wasn't as terrible that, well, at least for us. I mean, clearly it was for China then, but yeah, making that joke, but. I'm excited to see how they do it. And you're right. Like, nobody needs to like come up with a new language skill during this time, but I am going to attend the live event because I'm in a better mental space as of like the last couple weeks. And I was like, you know what? I could use some rah-rah. Yeah. I could use some virtual trust falls. Yep. Let me get a little inspiration.
How do you do a virtual trust fall? I need more information.
Well, there's a bed behind me, so I pretend that it's a group of people, and I just fall back.
This sounds like a great excuse for a nap.
It's funny. I can tell you all day long that like I'm doing fine. Like work is pretty good, and I feel like from the ADD aspect, I feel like I've been able to keep myself focused enough and balanced, and I'm making food enough, and yet last weekend I slept for like 15 hours. Like I went to bed.
Hey, your body needs what it needs.
I went to bed at like
stress is real.
Like, and it's just really interesting that I wouldn't have overtly told you I was stressed.
I'm really leaning back on, I find myself really calling up that old set of skills to survive deployment. And I really find myself leaning on that lately. And it's really applicable. Yeah, and I'll tell you, really, it comes down to just like a couple of things. Like,
all right, tell me. I'm ready.
Okay, here you go. Are you ready? All right.
Hold on,
your body needs to sleep and you can sleep, then goddamn it, sleep. Right? Your body's going to tell you what it needs. And if you are able to sleep, if you don't have to go get on a plane and fly a mission or go outside of the wire or whatever, you can sleep, then sleep. Because your body will not sleep more than it needs to. The end. If you are, get in your exercise, whatever that looks like to you, whether that's walking or just get your body moving at least once a day, right? And then I think a lot of it after that is ritual. Like these little, we used to have I hear people say Taco Tuesday all the time, and I totally thought like the military invented that, because Taco Tuesday, by the way, in a war zone is totally a thing. There is 100% Taco Tuesday going on in Bourbon, Afghanistan, just so that you all know. What? Yes. So we used to joke that was like the only way. Yeah, we used to joke that was the only way we knew it was Tuesday. It's because we went to the galley and there was tacos, right? Yeah. So like find those little rituals and those routines. We used to map out. So like we got tacos on Tuesday. The other thing was that Fridays was steak, right? You got steak in the galley on Fridays. Yeah. Okay. And it was always a super big thing if we had to fly like an evening flight on Friday, so we were going to miss our steak, and everybody would be like super pissed about it, right? But you would literally go on deployment and like figure out like how many steaks away from finishing deployment am I? Like you can't, obviously we can't do that because it's open-ended, but find your rituals, right? Find your things that mark your time. I'm however many steaks away from whatever holiday or whatever, but like do those things and honor those rituals to the extent that you can still participate in them. I think is huge. Right.
Okay. I love that. That's great advice.
Clearly we could talk to you forever, but I feel like to wrap up our time with you, you were talking earlier about like lingo, and I probably have to ask you your biggest Salesforce screw up. But really what I was going to say that we should wrap up with, like, I want to hear a sentence that makes total sense to you that just makes no sense to me. Like when you were talking about lingo and like trying to be in interviews and not use the words, like, I'm just curious, is there like something that's like everyone in the military would recognize, and I'm just going to look at you like I have no idea what you're talking about?
My husband was ragging on me about this actually, like literally just this morning. And he said to me something that I didn't really fully realize, that like when we first started dating, that I would be talking about things in the military and he would be like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, it's hard to like just do that on command, because to me, they're just words. They're just the natural way of talking about things.
Okay, fine. Don't perform.
I don't think of them.
Little monkey.
I won't be your trained monkey. I'll totally tell you about Salesforce screw-ups, though.
Yeah, tell me. What's your biggest Salesforce
screw-up? Okay. So
you're ready.
Activity records. Are you ready? Get ready. Okay, so when I was doing the implementation at that nonprofit where where we made the transition, right? So activity records are inherently very public, right? So like if I follow people on Chatter and they schedule activity records, appointments, phone calls, whatever, those are inherently very public, right? So we were so the place I worked was actually a sexual violence recovery center, right? So like people could go and get testing for DNA and like get a counselor and all this stuff. So very, very serious, very heavy work. Okay. So one of the things we did was we had a team of counselors that were trauma-informed counselors that we offered counseling to our clients. And they would schedule their counseling, and they really lived in their calendars. And this was their thing. They were all used to their Outlook calendars. It was a whole thing. So, here I come, admin, to save the day. We can sync your calendar to Salesforce, right? So I built this whole process where they would create appointments in their calendar, and it would create the appointment in Salesforce, and it would create the corresponding bookable unit of service that we could charge to the grant. Right. So I had it all set up. And when you integrate Outlook, how you can like map the individual fields and be like, yeah, I want this field to go here, and I want this field to go here, and I want this to go here. Yeah. Okay. So if you don't do that, it just copies everything over. Right. So I integrated Outlook, and the counselors started scheduling appointments, and yay, voila. In the activity records in the appointments were client names and like notes and everything that they were putting in the appointments that were about the clients. So like I literally realized this, and it was syncing. Like somebody from one of the other departments came over and was like, hey, I can see these appointments. And I was like, whoa. I literally like ran down the hall. No. Like I was in some other meeting. And I was like,
nobody look at Salesforce right now.
We like ran down the hall and like turned off the sink and was like going through and trying to be sure that I didn't. Yeah. So yeah, for a very brief period of time there, for like 10 minutes, I exposed a ton of client information basically to everyone on Salesforce.
Oh God. It's not. Yeah, I've been there.
There's my Salesforce mistake.
Thank you for chatting with us. I feel like we could talk more. I still have a gazillion questions just about your military life, but I get to work with you, so I can Slack you tomorrow.
If we're not Melinda, what's the best way to stalk you on the internet?
Oh, the 100% best way to stalk me on the internet is Twitter. I live and die by it, so I'm on the Twitters, and I am 100% happy, pleased, and privileged to be anyone's cultural guide to the military. So if people have questions, I love to answer them.
So in keeping with tooting your own horn, what's your Twitter?
It is my first name and my last name.
H-A-Y?
No punctuation.
L-E-Y.
HAYLEYTULLER.
Yes. Like her name in this episode. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm always so excited when I get to meet people that you know better than me, and like meet your people that obviously are
because we know a lot of the same people. Like, so it's kind of like, oh, yay, new.
Yeah. So that was, and it's such a really interesting perspective and a different way into the industry than both of us. So, I like to hear about the different paths to get you there.
I'm always fascinated by military backgrounds too, because you get to do so much. My half brother was in the military. My cousin was. So I don't know. I guess there's always something about it that I've always found very intriguing and maybe even like draw me in kind of thing. So yeah. And again, like I said earlier, I do like that I have someone to go to, and I'm like, there's this weird tweet about politics in Southeast Asia. Can you tell me about it? And she's all, sure. I'm like, yes.
Actually, I was there. No, we got some good ideas for vacation spots. So
yep. Yes, absolutely.
That's something I wouldn't really have thought. I mean, I guess I get the idea that you see the world, but I didn't really think about you see any places people would want to go.
Yeah, right. You only get to go to places no one wants to go, right? Totally. So it was a long one. So do you want to just say, of course, I love you. Thank you, everyone who's listening. And what's your super fave in this COVID time?
Yeah, we were thinking, it's tough we're not really experiencing all that much except for like nap, food, sleep, work, repeat, right?
Yeah.
So we figured our COVID coping mechanisms could be our favorite super faves today. So mine is rediscovering vodka Fresca. Fresca is actually surprisingly difficult to find in the grocery store, which is annoying.
The soda,
it's like a grapefruit soda, which I didn't realize because I don't really like grapefruit. It's like, but it's not
Squirt's
yellow.
Counterpart, right? Because Squirt is what Pepsi, Coke product. I think Fresca's the other.
Sure, probably.
Sure, that's important for me to put out there.
They also do sparkling water now, which I almost bought on accident, but it's sparkling soda. Or just soda? I don't know. Anyway, put some vodka in there. It's a lovely, refreshing summertime beverage.
Do you remember Clearly Canadian sparkling water?
Indeed, I do.
Came in the teardrop bottle. I love that stuff.
And the CC? Yeah. And there's like fruit flavors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, cherry was my favorite. Okay, so this last few weeks, my quarantine coping mechanism is we've got the whole backyard kind of set up again. Got the sails up and the patio furniture out there. Someone gave us some patio furniture because they were basically selling everything and going to go travel the world. Not super sure how they're going to do that right now, but anyways, we got some patio furniture, and I think I mentioned before too, we got some faux grass. So I've been enjoying having coffee and bourbon outside on the deck or in the backyard. This new bourbon is called Calumet, Calumet. And I think I'm amongst friends, not afraid to say that Josh and I crushed a bottle on Friday night by accident. It's so smooth, so smooth. And we were having drinks, making dinner and hanging out. And we danced in the kitchen a little, some songs we like. And then all of a sudden I was like, is that an old bottle? And he was like, that's the bottle I bought tonight. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is the bottle you bought tonight? He's like, yeah. I'm like, it's nearly gone.
Does it have a hole in it?
Yeah, right? And he's like, it's so smooth. I was like, it must be a less amount of ounces in the bottle because it's like a funny shape. He's like, no, babe.
I like that you're really trying, though.
I was like, what? Is this a mini? And he's like, nope. Is this still
Do they sell them half full?
So that's my coping mechanism is hanging out with Josh and hanging out back and having yummy bourbons and just trying to break up the weekdays and weekends. I was talking to my sister-in-law and I said, I usually like to be productive on the weekend and do stuff and crush out some to-do list stuff. And I've been purposefully not doing that because if I'm constantly doing things, I feel like there's no division. So I'm trying to make a conscious effort to not get on my computer if I don't need to. I don't need to get on and I could do a little work on this client. I could, but don't. Sit, do nothing, watch TV, have a drink at 2 p.m.
So you're having some more work-life balance, are you?
Yeah. Well, because if not, they all run together. So I'm trying to just be nope, this is the weekend. I'm either vegging out on the couch, ordering, takeout, having some drinks at 2, doing something that's not normal because the non-breaking of the days, it gets crazy.
Yeah, I feel that too. I think sleeping in has been my even more so of a treat than usually on the weekends.
Yeah.
But I also feel like for me, it's the evenings where it's it's 6:00. I need to get up and leave this room for a little while and not look at a computer anymore, because people will still email me, right? So it's I can keep doing stuff. And then all of a sudden it's oh, what happened?
Yeah, right. I need to do something else and drink more water usually.
There you
I'm
go.
usually pretty good about it, but I do that thing too. I just sit down at my computer and I'm like, what time is it?
Who am I?
Yeah. So anyways, I ramble on.
Lovely to see you.
And a good one. Great to see you.
Thanks for introducing me to a new friend.
I don't know. Next episode will just be you and me. And then the following one, we have another amazing guest.
Okay. In the meantime, stay witty.
Wow.